stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So, item number 3, call to the public.
Mr. Chairman, there's no one here from the public other than 2 members have not asked to speak at this point.
Okay. Item number 4, approval of minutes. Discussion, possible action, minutes of May 8th, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 5, open dialogue / review of information previously presented / questions. Mr. Kazian?
If the board has any, or the committee has any questions, I certainly we're here to entertain them. We have a few items to talk about. The financial worksheet and the final recommendations for the letter are pretty much the 2 major items, as well as we'll talk about the possible request for dissolution of the committee if you guys feel your work is done at the end of this meeting.
So moved.
I'm not sure we're on item number, we're not on item number 9 yet, sir, or 8, sir.
Chief, did you say that you're going to be, we'll have the report itself up here on the screen?
Yes,
that
we
we're
have,
going through?
we have the Word document that will come up here, so we'll talk specific about the report, a couple highlighted items I know that I have, and I'm sure some of you may have. Do we like this word? Is this, and hopefully we can not spend the entire day, wordsmithing every piece and item of it, but there are a few questions that I do have about that.
Just, Karen, I know that you asked if we were going to read this, and will that be sufficient? Or we could take 10 minutes or so and for all of us to take some time to read it, so.
I'd just like a few minutes to scan over where the changes were that we made. If we're gonna go over all those changes today, then no, I don't.
Yeah, the changes themselves, I don't know if we have them, the red line copy necessarily. I think there was some very minor changes, Tricia, would you say, as a general rule, other than
And we just
grammatical?
Moved a few things and.
Moved a couple things. You'll see those as we go. So, if we want to try that and if we need to stop, we can do that.
Exactly. Just point out where they went, make sure
I like that if we can,
Yeah.
because I think there was just a few minor
Okay, I'm good with that.
wordsmithing things that
like, I thought
highlight.
there were 8 recommendations and there's only 7 and.
Yeah, we combined one of them, so we'll talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
And we're going to move one maybe up, add to one of the items as well. So,
Okay. Thank
so with that, are there any questions as it relates to the stations, any of the work that we talked with CORE on, anything that we have talked about in the past? This may be our last meeting. Certainly, the staff will always be available to you to ask a question post-committee or anything like that if something comes up or something's not sure. So that always will remain the same. I know Pat is back from a fire that he was at. He's been tracking everything I know via email and keeping up with everything. Betty, as an HR symposium today, she had to be at, so she apologizes. And Wendy sent her appreciation, but she was unable to make today for some personal conflicts, and so she was sorry she couldn't be here as well. So with that, if there's, I'll leave it to you to.
Okay, any other questions or comments about what we've already talked about in previous meetings? If not, we'll move on to item number 6. Discussion, possible action, review of 5/8/17 funding worksheet to all committee members.
Okay, so committee, I apologize. I tried to print these, and my computer does not like some of these forms for some reason, so you'll have to look up here. It will be in your book when we get that to you. We'll have a 3-ring binder by the time we're done with all this information in it and all the addendums and everything in it. But go ahead, Mr. Waters.
Yeah, Chief, I just want it for those out there in TV land. The one we're actually going to be talking about is 510, not
510.
5/8. The agenda says 5/8.
It was revised yesterday.
Yeah. So this is 5.8 version 2, which happened on 5.10. How's that sound? Thank you for the clarification. I'm ringing here, standby. Hope it's Gabe right now. He must have known we were talking about him. Okay, so I wanted to go through and just make sure we were clear on a couple items as it related to this worksheet. Let me pull this up a little bit bigger so you folks can see it. Yeah, if I can figure out how to do that. This arrow? Oh, right there. Money. There you go. Thanks, Gary. Welcome back. We missed you. Okay, I'll slide this over. So we took this one here. If we look at this option here as a no bond option, so if we consider funding our capital projects that we've identified as being in need, we run this out. This is the 10-year budget that's projected with no bond. And if you look, we're looking at the mill rate is what we're looking at, and the increases in the mill rate, as well as in this case. So this is the same one you've seen before, where we go to 328 and 335 in the mill rate, which we are not allowed to do by law right now. So this is just, if you were to spread it out and make it happen, that's what you'd have to do, which we cannot do. So this option at this point in the last 2 years of this fiscal year would not be able to be done. When I look at the next one, which is a no bond, and we deal with the rate cap, you can see very quickly that we would have to be at $3.25 in the year fiscal 21, and we would run out 325. Now, the premise for this is again, funding our capital projects as we've identified. We may go, well, that seems crazy. I would not want to be at the 325 cap for all those years. We're going to have to do something different. That would be another discussion the board would have to decide if that's how they wanted to operate. But it shows the danger here of we're making these assumptions of 2.5% and 3% assessed valuation growth. If those don't happen at those numbers and they're lower than, then we can't even get there in this model. So this is kind of a funding the bond, funding the capital needs kind of on the back end, if you will. And you're going to see the next one where we fund it on the front end. So here's example number 2. Are there any questions on this one? Dave, did you have something or no?
No, I
okay.
just wanted to be sure
Yep.
that everybody understood that this is based on funding the approximate 26 million that we all agreed on last week over 10 years.
Correct.
And can we look at the bottom of the page? I want to see what the budget's at, where the budget's at.
The budget numbers really don't change. Well, I mean, the dollars would change because we're getting more capital. So you see here, we're doing $3.5 million here, 2.5, 3.5, 4.4, 3.9. So these numbers are higher through here because we're getting more. We're allocating more money. So here we're at 19 and 20, 21, and these ones were 20, 22s.
The other point I want to make on this one, is it this one? 70s. No, I take that back. We changed it.
So when you start looking at the bottom and the percentages of where the increases the budget would be, you're seeing this large increase, in through here, and then we're just capped. So this is a matter of really the multiplier of the AV really is why this is so lower than. But you can see those jumps would be, I would think would be concerning and fairly, the tolerance for those things would be in question by a taxpayer,
Absolutely.
and their immediate impact. In number 3, this is where we fund there's no bond with early funding. So now you're looking at going to a higher rate and funding the bond earlier. So you're seeing now where's the capital here? Oh, I'm not down far enough. Yeah, I got to be there. That's why I can't see it. There you go. You're seeing we're funding at the $4 million for a bunch of years and 3.5, and then work our way down. So now we're ratcheting up quicker. But you're not seeing you're seeing a 20% jump this first year. You're seeing these 4s, things like that throughout the process. So again, the question on how that would impact a taxpayer,
Chris,
real time.
also on this particular sheet, if my numbers are correct, capital, we end up being still 1.45 short of the 26 necessary. So this scenario would cause the board to have to make a decision as to what we're not going to do.
Right. And go ahead, Karen.
I don't think I could tolerate a 20% increase, even for 1 year.
You don't like
So,
that?
No.
Okay, well, there's one. Okay, so when we look at that, what's nice about this, so from a fire district perspective, from a board perspective, look at our mill rate. Our mill rate, gets to 324 in 1 year, but then it works its way back down again. So if you want to be responsive and do what you have to do to make it work and work within that, and it allows some flexibility if we had a different AV, if it didn't come into where it was, this would afford us some opportunities for some safety, if you will, to get done what we have to do, but much like Committee Member Maxwell said, that 20% jump that 1 year, and likewise, it creates some problems. So that's the three scenarios we played out with the bond, or with no bond, rather. I'm not going to spend time talking. This is the same information we talked about, the $15 million bond and what that does. You're seeing, again, the jumps at the bottom of the overall changes of the budget. Had Gabe put those in. I think that's new information from the last time, I believe. This is the $17 million budget and what those increases are. We'll spend just a little bit of time looking at the $18 million budget because this is really what I believe we're talking about looking at. So as Ms. Maxwell said, she was not interested in a 20% increase. How about a 2.18% increase?
That's tolerable.
Now keep in mind that that's the aggregate increase. That's including the bond. That's the bond and the mill rate. That's the overall budget change. So, and then remember we were talking about 21s and 22s in here? You're not seeing that either. So this is the $18 million bond. You can see the mill rates up there. It ends us at about a 3.14. Certainly gives us some opportunities that if we had to have some lower assessed value years, the ability to increase the mill rate. I want to be very clear. Remember that when if the AV goes down and we increase the mill rate, your levy is the same. We're just multiplying two numbers to get to the same number. Is that? I can't say that enough because sometimes people get confused on that pretty quickly.
Do you have that sheet again that compared the cost per household, what it's
Yep.
going to look like? Okay.
Coming up. You're coming up fast. Yeah. So here's the a page here. So I will stop and talk about this for a second. What we tried to show here is this is the median cost of a home. $345,000 is the median cost of a home at the time we stifle. I'll just say both every time it'd be covered. Comes across. So their estimation is that it's going to cost $59.35 for the average homeowner in a $15 million bond, $67 for 17, and $71.22 and an $18 million bond.
And that's total. That's not per $100,000.
No,
right?
that's total for that home. So you would divide that by 3.45 to get that number, and it's whatever that is per 100, $20 or whatever that is. This other column here is what we probably will talk a little bit about. So this is what Stiefel has said. This is what it's going to cost by the multiplier of the bond payment, the impact into the whole number. But what we're going to show you in a minute is the actual impact to the home. That's for the bond. But if you start talking about the cost of operations and everything else, it's going to go up. You'll see a difference than $59 in what we're going to show you in the budget, the next two pages. This last column was really trying to compare, hey, if we do the pay cash go process versus the bond process will cost you, just apple to apple, will cost you $921 more to bond the $15 million over the 25 years versus pay go for the cost of the capital improvements. So this is, if you want to call it this is the interest, this is the juice, this is whatever you want to call it, to amateurize out the money in either 15, 17, or $18 million. That's what's going to cost you in interest over the 25 years of the product, the bond. Is that clear what we're trying to accomplish here? So I don't know if this verbiage says that, or if we need to create another paragraph up top that just tries to explain what this total cost over the life of the bond is, because if you multiply 60 by 25 years, that number doesn't add up. So we're not saying this is the cost times the life of the bond. These are two separate numbers. Does that help? And I don't know if anyone's got any comments or concerns about that.
When I read that, I just took the arithmetic and applied it and go, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
Because I see that as, I should be able to take that number, estimated annual cost of $60, and multiply it by 25, and because it says total cost over the life of the bond. It doesn't tell me that we're comparing it, that $920, we're comparing it to what it would cost if we used pay-as-you-go. So I think in the lower section below it, somewhere, however you want to make it, there needs to be a paragraph that kind of spells that out.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I think someone from the public is going to read that and say, Well, their arithmetic is wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Because they won't be, part of it too is that, remember, we've sat here how many meetings? So we've kind of ingrained some of this stuff into us so that it's almost like we're reading something, like when you read a paragraph and you know what it's supposed to say. I think that's what's here. So I think we need to put some language in there so that it's clear to somebody who, when this is the first time they've read it.
Yep, agreed.
So we'll put an asterisk. My thought is we'll put an asterisk at the end of bond, total cost of life of the bond with an asterisk. And at the bottom, we'll do the asterisk and we'll say this is the difference between pay-go and funding that versus bonding the money at $18 million, or well, in this case, we're talking $18 million. And that'll be the difference in the cost to the taxpayer on a median priced home. And we'll wordsmith that a little bit. Would that accomplish?
Just so I can clarify then, the difference really is the fact that if you pay go, your mill rate's gonna be higher, which means you're gonna be paying more taxes. And so that 921 represents the interest on the bonds, the additional cost in the way of interest on the bonds versus the pay-go costs, and the project costs are gonna stay the same either way.
So the project costs stay the same. If we borrow $15 million in a bond and we have $26 million worth of needs, we gotta make up that $11 million. That's pay-go, there's no interest on that, all that stuff. 18 million, we only have to come up with another $8 million. There's kind of variables in there. And the difference is, this number is just a product of math, meaning we borrowed 15 million, multiplied to pay that back at the 17 cents or whatever that was to get that. If we just borrow 15 million and say, how much does it cost to pay the $15 million back? It'd be an average of $60, $59.35 per resident. We're using this as an overall, hey, if we're trying to do this whole big picture, which 15, 17, or $18 million is part of, if we do the bond, it's gonna cost us $1,105 more to do this $18 million bond and take care of everything else we're talking about doing than just paying cash.
Somehow you gotta, I think we need to express that
Yes.
completely. So,
I will wordsmith that in a very nice paragraph. If we can send it to you guys, if there's anything, but I think we've got a very great point that Gary made, and we can come up with, explain that. And Dave, did you have something else? Did I explain that well enough for you, Tim?
Yep, yeah.
So
I
it's-
think the chart needs a little bit of
Yep.
tweaking so that it's clear to the public.
I agree. I agree. So know what that 921 versus 1105 is. And then the key that we talk about here really is we talked about a $15 million bond at whatever point we got, forced into giving a number. This is $184 difference, which is the $7.36 or something like that a month. Or, I'm sorry, a year different. $7.36 a year different. So if you had a home that was twice the size, that we're talking about a $15 a year difference between a 15 and an $18 million bond, and the value of that $3 million to help pay for the telecom and the fleet, the portions of that, really have some high value, which you'll see in a second in the next two slides. Gary, does that help? Are we good there?
Yeah, I think we just need to work on that verbiage for that one side so that it's just clear and then we'll be fine. Because I read it wrong, and just the first time I read it.
So board, if you want to look, or committee, if you want to look at this here, our proposed budget at $2.53 at $2.53 in the mill rate. It was a long night last night, folks. Sorry. The taxes will be for that median home again will be $875. In the year post bond, if it was to pass, depending on which bond you would pass, 15, 17, or $18 million. Since we're talking about 18, I'm going to focus on that. But I want you to always go back up to the 15. You'll see the difference is about $75. Now, why is it more than that when we said if you do the $15 million bond, it was going to cost you this much more, right? If you took the $17 million bond, it was going to cost you $71 more. We're not too far off, to be honest with you, right? From 75 to 946.
Yep.
Remember, though, the $75 bond is running right here. Or I'm sorry, the $75 that we're talking about is running in here. If this number is going up too, that's going to affect this bottom number. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, so this is an aggregate of our actual budget plus the bond payment. And that's why those numbers aren't the same. You can't say, well, the bond said it'd only be up $75. That's what the bond costs. This is what it costs here. So what's interesting here is if you borrow 15 million, back to what I said earlier about having to fund that other $3 million, it creates we're at $9.50 for that same homeowner. And if you do the 18 million, it's at $9.46. We're saving $4. I understand we're not talking about a large sum of money, but the sheer fact that it is lower than
Crazy.
borrowing more is lower than. And as you go through here, you start to look, 1249 to 1242 and 1450. It kind of runs the same way through here throughout the entire piece. And it shows the difference there of what that is. Is there any questions on where that's at? So you could imagine if you had a home twice the size of that, you would just basically multiply that by 2, the difference in what those taxes would be and the increase. That's the numbers. That's the brass tacks, I guess. That's the bond comparison. If we were to go without a bond and try to fund this, so remember we were at 946 in the $18 million realm. If you look here now, those 3 same models, not to exceed 325, the bond with the rate cap. So this is the first one where we exceeded it. This is with the rate cap put in place, the 325s, and this is with the early funding component. So this same person's taxes would go up almost $200 this first year, where I believe you said you didn't like that idea, and I don't think you like that idea either. And so you can see the difference here. There's a cost savings of depends which model you go with and which track you go with. Some significant savings and smoothing out that exposure to the taxpayer.
And once again, do you want to cause the people that are living here now for the next 5 years to take the whole burden, or do you want to spread it out over 20 to 25 years, and so whoever's living here will appreciate the services and pay their share? I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I don't think we could say that enough, Karen, could we? I mean, it's that important to understand the difference there. And then obviously going out, you're at $1,330 on those last couple of years. And remember, in the last couple of years, I'm sorry, let me go all the way out. You're at $1,465 or $1,391, so almost $1,400 either way. And you're at the $1,400. You're in 10 years, you're catching up to where you were. So you're smoothing out that entire thing for 10 years, as you just spoke to get to if you do the bond. I don't know that I have much more to talk about as it relates to the finance piece. I wanted to be very clear and transparent as to how the impact of the taxpayers what they would see, how it would go, and the 3 different options we have for no bond, and where the $18 million bond comes into play, or the $15 million for that matter. You guys are easy.
Chief?
Because you've been here for, 3 months?
3 months, 3 years.
So, Chief,
Yes.
For the barn.
let's see if I can word this right. At one of the meetings, I know I talked about the fact that the real intent of the bond is to provide that bridge because of the gap in funding. So, is it safe to say that by using the bond, we'll put the district in the position so that 10 years down the road, or, because this is just a CIP for 10 years, that 10 years down the road, there should be, subject to, there's always variables, adequate funding to maintain a CIP.
Yeah, so that's one of the findings you have in your recommendations, which we're going to talk about in a second. So that's really important. Certainly, a board in the future could decide that's a really bad idea. I'm not sure why that would be, and I would highly recommend against it. But some folks might think that's a way to save money or do something different. It'll put us right back in the situation, and some poor fire chief and some other citizens committee will be stuck going, why didn't they do that? So that's really important that we do that. And each year, that CIP, every year that goes out, we're really adding that next, that the 11th year gets kind of brought into the 10-year plan. And then the 12th year comes in 2 years later. And we're always looking, and we then go, hey, geez, we've got these needs now in year 2036 or whatever, wherever we are in that spectrum, right? And then I go, whoa, geez, if we have to fund this item, then you might need to start, you need to increase your your capital fund to account for that, right? And if it goes down, so we don't have these needs, for the next 6 years, it's going down, and we know that our depreciation account only needs to be at this number, then we can lower it, and that's what you need to be planning for, so that you always have the money to fund your capital projects with that money and amortize it out over time. Does that make sense? That's all part of this plan, which is the beauty of what we're trying to accomplish here.
There will be a level that he's talking about where the capital reserves will be at, and then after that, we don't need to keep adding to it.
Well, no, every year
I
we'll,
mean-
we'll be adding to it, but we'll be spending the money.
To keep it at that level.
Correct.
That's what I
Correct.
meant.
You're kind of just maintaining at that point. So that's exactly right. Does that make sense, what you're asking?
Yeah, and then the only exception that I would think that would apply to that would be, I'm going to use station something, stations like Station 4 is a good example. That's something that I think that if I was sitting at 5-10 years from now, sitting here, that would be something that I would probably say, that makes sense bondable for the logical reason of let the people pay who's using it down the road, but everything else should basically be able to be funded within the operating budget.
Yeah, and the for instance that we don't know the crystal ball on, and it speaks to it in the report is, if we have a population boom, if they decide to open up some tract of land and they put housing in there, and we end up with 2,000 more residents down off of 89A or Lower Loop Road or right out on top of Cathedral Rock or something like that. I mean, I don't know. That's a new dynamic to the situation that would create a whole new potential need, depending on what that looked like, and we would have to then either figure out how to fund that. Hopefully, if we said, hey, gosh, in 10 years, this is what's going to happen, we would start planning for it and build our way up to it. Or we'd say, hey, this happens, we need to go back to a bond because they're building a new fire station that we didn't plan for because we didn't see this thing coming or whatever, whether that was poor planning on our behalf or it really just got sprung on us. So you're absolutely right, and the report talks about that, I believe.
It does.
Oh.
So,
Chief, the other point that I calculated last night was versus the 15 versus say the $18 million bond. At the $15 million bond, at the end of the 10 years, the capital fund looked like it would only have about $700,000 left in it. Whereas if we do the 18, the capital fund would have about 1.45. Addressing Gary's point, we're starting to build that capital fund to where Gabe talked about a month or two ago about wanting to have that, 15%
correct.
in capital reserves, as well as having that cushion there so that we can start addressing years 11 through 20 in the capital.
So I want to be clear. I want to make sure we don't mix an apple and an orange here. So I think Gabe's 15% was talking about unrestricted fund balances. That's in the general operating kind of, I don't say rainy day, but have that ability to, for lack of better words, rainy day fund. Then we know on our capital plan if we're spending $1.5 million a year in capital, you want to have 1.5 million in your capital plan, and then funding it every year at 1.5 million, so you're allocating that, and you don't have all these spikes and everything like that versus, and so that's why we want to get to that 1.5, or maybe as we go through, and like, man, we really need 2 million. We need to build that up to get to 2 million in that capital fund because we have this project coming up or in the next couple of years and that type of stuff. So you're really, it's kind of a little bit of bobber effect there. So I just make sure we're clear on that 15% piece.
I'm not sure anymore about lots of things, but but is there a policy in place, or can we recommend that the board put a policy in place, or is it a law somewhere that the capital reserves is only for capital and that the budget can only be what's sustainable by the mill levy rate and the income by the ambulance billing, the fire? So as what happened just a few short years ago can't happen again, where they cut the mill levy so low that they have to rob from your capital reserves in order to fund your budget. Is there some mechanism that can be maybe even just a statement of I'm not sure the words I want, but do you get what I'm after?
Yeah, I understand. So law, I don't want to say it's a law. I'm feeling like there is a best practice for sure, whether or not it's a law that capital funds are supposed to be, when they're earmarked for capital, get spent on capital. That doesn't mean, I don't believe it doesn't mean that a board can't reallocate that money through a motion or do whatever they do to move it because of needs. So if we had a 15% decrease in the assessed value, and we said, hey, we gotta, move that money out of capital, we're never buying a fire truck for 10 more years, and we just gotta keep the lights on in the place. I don't know, we wanna restrict ourselves from having that freedom through a policy or whatever, without some provisions for emergencies or something like that. But the concept is there. We want to create a program and an environment where best practices are being followed, that we have the right mechanisms for funding, short-term and long-term. And I don't know, I would leave that to the board to decide if they'd like to make a policy. And if this committee felt that was really important, you certainly could make a recommendation as such. I think you talk about that in there already with creating funding for the capital to create this from happening to be done again. And it actually references past decisions by boards and staff that may have gotten us to where we are today as well. So I think we kind of dance around that a bit in the report already, but I'll leave it to someone else to tell me.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Maxwell. That was actually in my mind as a question as well about future. That being said, if current board does set a policy, future boards can change that policy
Correct.
to do whatever they want.
Correct.
That being said, for the public needs to be aware of that, to my opinion, to be involved, so we don't get back to this situation, to express their thoughts to whatever board in the future, if that ever does come up again like it has in the past.
I think it's great. I think it's the democratic process, and I think the best practices of the district and our operating mentality and programming right now is for sustainability. And some of those things create unsustainable futures that we want to try to avoid. And I can tell you that in the future going forward, if those things were to come to fruition, I can tell you as a fire chief, I would be very vocal in saying that if you're doing this, you're the 5 elected officials. You have every right to do that. This is going to be the effect of what you're about to do.
Well, maybe just having that word in there, sustainability, in somewhere where we're talking about our best practices, would just reiterate.
Be recommendation number 7, we could put it in there somewhere.
Well, we'll get to those as we wordsmith this thing in a minute.
I think you bring up a real important point, and I think there is merit in possibly having a financial policy that would deal with this, with the appropriate language. It would allow, if there's some sort of emergency, it would allow for that ability to do something different. But it'll be a lot more difficult for a future board to overturn a financial policy without drawing a lot of attention to it from the public. And so I'm not necessarily opposed to strengthening that language to where there is a recommendation for the board to consider adopting a financial policy regarding, because I think it's a real important issue.
Yeah, because we don't want the board to cause us to fall into an emergency situation that causes the city, the fire district to have to move into those funds. So I guess that's the criteria there, that little bit of language. May help, may not, but it'd be nice for it to be strong enough for, like you just said, the community would know something's going on and wouldn't at least be more vocal and be more involved in what's going on with their fire district.
It's not that I haven't enjoyed the last 3 months here,
Or the 2007.
or the
Still twitching.
2007, but Chief, to your point, if something happens and a community happens out at the Dells or whatever happens, and then we have to talk about a fire station. To me, that is completely different, in Lonnie's terms again, bondable situation, than having to talk to me about buying portable radios and a fire truck. And so that's why I'm talking, it's like, to get back to this state, to Karen's point, is I think have it there and have that capital in having, like the chairman said, some sort of financial policy. I do like it, stronger language. I do like that. Not being that it can't be changed in the future, but it's going to have to be a process as of changing it now. So I do like that, Chairman.
So if we think about that and we get to the recommendation side of things, if you think we'd like to recommend to the board a revision or a consideration or what's the word I'm looking for? Take a look at all the financial policies. I know Gabe's looked at the financial policies. Our practices are excellent as far as, what we do and from an auditing per standpoint and everything. We've got very good procedures in place, but we do have some financial policies that he thinks we probably should be amended, as best practice in today's world, things like that.
That
So
would probably be
it might
the
be one of them
recommendation, right?
that we could,
Ask the board to relook at it.
yeah, just ask the board
Review
to
its
consider,
financial policies.
review financial policies and consider implementation of a policy to continue to fund and maintain a capital improvement fund.
You get it.
I get it, and if you choose to want to do it, when we get to that section, let's talk about it there when we get there. But I think that's within the purview of the group, whether the board says thanks, but no thanks, that's up to them.
Right.
Okay. The only other piece that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know, do you want to get back to Mr. Waters' report as they talked about? We have two members who were not here last time to express any of their concerns or thoughts on the $18 million piece and kind of help at least get on the record what they thought about that. I don't know if where that is in the agenda, if that makes sense, but we talked about trying to get them to at least have a chance to hone in on or chime in on their thoughts as it related to last week's recommendations or Monday's recommendations.
This might be the best time to do
Before
it
we get
since
to
we're
this.
getting ready to go through
I
this.
will turn it over to you.
Okay, so, Mr. Johnson, we did go through your comments last week at the meeting, point by point. I think for the most part, they were addressed, and there were actually some changes made to the report to reflect some of your concerns. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add at this point, or other comments about the $18 million that the committee is currently recommending?
Well, at this time, I don't have any comments about the 18 million, but I do thank you for going over my points, because I wasn't able to be here. I would have to say probably gut feeling. I mean, I'm not convinced that the 18 million is necessary. I understand the balance. I understand that we're behind and so forth. I think that as we go through this, that, and discussing it again and hearing some input from you guys, I think that will answer my questions. And if I do have any questions, I will gladly bring them up.
Okay.
Okay?
And if I could just clarify, we're talking about basically a $15 million station repair, replacement kind of price tag. And then there's fleet and telecom being funded at about $3 million, 1.9 and 1.1 in round numbers is where the 18 million comes from. So I have to make sure we're clear on where that's coming from as well. And it's kind of a hybrid for the fleet and the telecom, because the numbers are, the 26 million Mr. Waters spoke to is an overall aggregate number in the next 10 years of capital needs that we have. So anyways, to make sure that, and then Pat, I don't know.
Pat?
I'm kind of probably feel like I'm right where Gary is, Initially, it was a $15 million number, and as each meeting progressed, we could see where the needs were. And then, excuse me, so it kind of just changing it from 15 to 18 was this thinking about the community and how they're going to respond. But as I look at the numbers as they're presented, it makes sense. It just makes sense overall to the financial security of the organization and the growth that's going to occur. And I don't know all the pieces that were selected out of the rolling stock, and I did look at the IT piece. It's kind of difficult to follow sometimes, but Bob does his job real well. So yeah, I'll just listen as we go along. I did read the letter and it looks good. So if I have any comments, I'll just jump in as I see fit.
Okay, thank you. So do you want to lead us through the report?
Sure, if you'd like, I'd be glad to, or would Mr. Waters like to lead us to the report?
Can we reiterate that 15 million was just the starting point, so we had a number to start, and we were hoping no one would get stuck on that. That's what we thought the mill or the bond would be, because it was never intended to be just that.
Yeah.
It's
It
a
was-
work in progress.
Yeah, it was absolutely very clearly identified that 15 million might be the number. It could be a little more, it could be a little less, and I wouldn't belittle $3 million as just a little bit more, but in the big picture of the cost of items we're talking about, it's one or two projects away from 15 to 18 million. So, so Mr. Waters, do you want to go through this, or you like me to? You did a wonderful job last time, but I'm happy to go through it.
I think it's your turn.
It's my turn. All right, I take direction well. Okay. So with that, I'm going to, just the first page, is there any comments or questions? I've got one or two myself, but I will open up to you guys. Anything on the first page that has any attention that needs to be given? I'm looking at the only one on item number 2, really. When we look, we'll get to a part where it talks about station 4 and then station number 5, and then there's a special note. So I think it's on page like 6 or 7, 5 or 6. 6. I was right there. 5 or 6, 6 or 7, 6. Should have went with my gut. I think that special note should end up in item number 2, where it's just, I don't know if a special note would just be included in that just says, hey, we're looking for efficiencies and cost savings to require a minimum amount of bonding needed for the capital projects. The board should consider packaging projects together that might create cost savings, whatever that special note kind of says. So I'm recommending we move that special note out of that position and put it in number 2. So if anyone has any questions or problems, I think that just cleans it up and it fits that bullet very well.
Well, because it's like a for instance.
Yeah.
Right, I get
Yeah.
that.
That's how they could find some efficiencies.
Tricia or Chris, do we need to move and motion and vote and all that kind of stuff, or can we just all raise our hand?
Well, I think if
to make
everyone's,
these changes?
yeah, and I think, if anyone's like got a problem, just tell us now at the end when we take the vote for the finalization of that. You know, and if you guys would like, we can wordsmith that whole thing right now, or we can just take what I just said we're going to do and just trust that we're going to do that. You just tell me how you'd like to do it, because we can make it word for word, so you see the words there, and we're done. I'm
Just
happy to
move
do
it
that.
up there and wordsmith
Yeah.
it.
Is there a consensus of the committee to move that?
Yes.
Can it be not just pertaining to 4 and 5? Can it be consideration should be given on all projects if timing and circumstances allow it? For instance, 4 and 5. So then we're not just saying it's for 4 and 5.
I agree with that. That's absolutely true and correct. That's what we're trying to say or want to say. So I would prefer, if you're good with that, to do that offline, so to speak, than try to wordsmith this in front of everyone here on live TV and
Do it offline.
and worry about that. So if you guys are good, I'm going to move this in concept here. Now. See why I don't want to do this on live TV?
No.
Yep, I know somebody that knows somebody. Okay, we'll move that there, and all projects. So we'll do that with all projects as well included. Perfect. All right, that's all I had on page 1. Page number 2. Any questions? Again, I've got some.
Chief, we talked about CMAR, and is it a quote-unquote process? And I don't know the answer to that.
Method of procurement, method of building, method of contracting. So I wanted to add, where it just says CMAR process, I wanted to add something in here that just smooth that out to be whatever it is. And if you guys can give us the liberty of making that, Gary, you gotta.
When I first read this, I kind of know what this is, but I'm just thinking from the public's view. Maybe a sentence in there that referred to the station construction remodel, so that's what that process would be used for, would be a little more clarification to someone from the public who reads it.
So something like when
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do talk about specific on findings of the committee number 8, but Gary, you want to move it to the
I'm just-
recommendation as well?
Well, I'm
Or-
thinking that since it's right here, it says number 6, which is a recommendation. Okay, so I'm just thinking, as I read that, if I run across something that, what is this? I should be able to figure out what it is, not having to read necessarily the rest of it. So maybe even just as much as the cleaning up the board to take strong look at implementing major construction remodeling projects for the stations. I mean, something that's just a little more clarification so that when you read it, you understand that we're not using this process for everything. I mean, it was just the way I kind of took it the first time I read it.
Like that.
Do you mean, Gary, to move, major construction and fire station remodel projects to the beginning of six? So that it's right there,
Yes.
rather than waiting until the end of that section?
That, I think that would even clean it up a little better.
Okay, because I put in when implementing capital projects, utilization of a construction manager at risk, CMAR design and building process would likely provide the best overall tax value to the taxpayers and the committee, taxpayers, period. I think that's a period, and then the committee encourages the board to take a strong look at implementing a CMAR in major constructions and remodeling process. The reason this recommendation is important is because you folks spent some time listening to the people talk, and some folks would believe that a hard bid, low bid, that's the best way to go. You're gonna get the lowest price possible. And so you've done some work listening, and you like this concept and the thought that it may actually get us a better value and actually save us money than going to a hard
Played
bid.
and found that out just ourselves,
Yeah.
talking about stuff.
You have the CMAR design and building process highlighted and Tricia, that means that's gonna be an actual hyperlink, and is that hyperlink
Oh.
gonna be more to a definition like, Mr. Johnson's asking for?
I just highlighted that now so we'd
Just
see
that-
it.
So that they knew
I-
to fix it.
Okay.
Okay. And I would think if the words fire stations was in there, that would make it a little more clear for the public.
Okay.
I'd
And
also like a number 5, maybe I'm just being picky, but I am, that the elected fire board directs staff to continue its active pursuit of alternative funding of such as grants. So, I wanted to say continue, because we know you
Continue.
are.
I think that makes sense.
So it's not just about this, but it's a continuation of that practice. To continue its active pursuit of alternate funding such as grants.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's just reinforcing what we're currently doing, making it look like we're not asking for this to be the first time to do this.
And only.
Right,
Right.
because there'll be people that will read this that maybe aren't up to speed on other stuff.
Why haven't they been doing this all along?
Perfect point.
So I'm highlighting this just so we made a change. I just need to make sure we wordsmith this so we capture this. I'm gonna highlight this one just so we know that Tricia needs to do, something here. Are we close in both of those? Without the, again,
Is the committee comfortable with the language?
Yeah.
It might be tweaked a little bit.
yeah,
Right.
if we need to change a to or a from or a tense or something like that, but if that gets the gist of what we're trying to accomplish there? for
I think it
folks?
does.
Okay. I had on number 7, I had a question on the second, so that this board and future boards approve appropriate annual funding and capital reserves following best practice procedures so that 10 years from now, there will be money in the capital fund. I just thought that seemed a little bit, there could be funds allocated or funding allocated, or something that seems like there's a little more formal words that could be used in there. I'm not sure if
Mr. Chairman and Chief, this is what I think we were talking about a few minutes ago. Would it be appropriate to put in this, what we talked about, recommendation about a fiscal financial policy implementation? Would that be
I
appropriate?
think it would be a number 8 personally. I think it'd be it's a separate number in my mind, but it could go under there. And I'm just thinking on the fly here, so if you guys are, it probably
It
doesn't.
was kind of like what we've been talked about, making sure that the capital fund
If
is
it's just for
being
this
funded.
fund, I guess, yeah, we could do that. Whatever you guys, it's your pleasure. I'm good.
It would kind of make sense to me to include that language in number 7.
perfect.
I agree.
The committee, I like a furthermore in there somewhere. That's always good. Furthermore,
And a heretofore?
the committee recommends the governing.
And Chief, I'd also just throw out, based on what you were saying a few minutes ago, if money is not the right word, I certainly trust you and Tricia to find the right word.
Funding.
Okay, we'll highlight that one there, and we'll just try to firm that up if there's a better way to say that. Furthermore, the committee recommends the governing board establish a financial policy to appropriate the necessary funds to create sustainability, I think was Karen's word. If you can spell it. I'm showing my weaknesses here now. And
To create a sustainable
capital,
capital fund, would it be more,
Capital fund.
would it be, instead of a sustainability, more of a sustainable capital?
Fund, yep, I agree.
Chief, necessary funds to create a sustainable capital improvement fund instead of, would that wordsmith it better, more better?
Yes.
more better. Yeah, you guys are watching this. I'm on the fly under the pressure, so please.
I feel better.
And again, I'm going to highlight this to, we'll, again, if this is what we're trying to say, we'll get it dialed in. Furthermore, the committee recommends the governing board establish a financial policy to appropriate the necessary funds to create a sustainable capital improvement fund in perpetuity or in,
That was going to be my next question, would be, the committee recommends the governing board. Is it appropriate for us to put in the governing board or the governing board and future governing boards? Is that just as our recommendation? That would cover, I don't like the word perpetuity.
okay.
I don't personally, because who knows what's going to happen, but it's just our recommendation for current and future boards. Is everybody okay? I'm okay if you're not, but is you okay with that?
How about infinity? You like infinity?
And beyond. Sorry. I have to.
I like referring to future governing boards, because I think that sends a message that this is just not the current board that we're recommending this to. It's all future governing boards. I think it's a good thing.
Establish a financial policy
I don't know about.
appropriate the necessary funds to create.
Well, I think too, what's gonna happen is that this young lady behind us is gonna wordsmith it and make it
Right,
make sense.
clean it up.
We're gonna get one more shot to look at this, when it kicks to us, just to make sure that, that's what I think, we're gonna get one more shot to look at this, because we have to sign it off. So,
I'm hoping to sign it off today, thank you,
okay.
As
I
amended.
won't have a,
as amended.
well,
And it wouldn't be future governing boards establishing it. It will already be established. They'll just be following it.
Follow.
Or
best
however.
practice principle or policy. whatever.
There you go. Thank you. Recommends the current governing board establish and future governing boards.
Follow this best practice principle of financial. Right?
Maintain a best practice financial policy. Appropriate. Yeah,
I like it.
I like that. The current governing board. Sorry, microphone. The current governing board. I like that. I like that. Gary, you good with that?
I think that's good.
It's on the way.
Is that what you guys are trying to accomplish? Are we close?
That's close.
I still like infinity in there somewhere, but
Yeah, we can't control what the future boards are going to do, but we definitely can put our strong recommendation as a committee of what we think they should do.
I think as Mr. Ernster said, if the current board creates a financial policy and somewhat point a future board changes that policy, that's a public
Right.
event. And you'd have to question why that was happening. And if someone's paying attention, as you mentioned earlier, Lonnie, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, we're gonna abolish the capital plan. That's not a good idea anymore. I got problems with that. We just got done going through this bond.
They'll at least
I won't
get
sit
all
on,
of
I
us.
won't serve on another committee. I'm done.
Right.
So I think that's a great opportunity that kind of at least makes a transparent move for all folks, and it's a good practice anyway. So,
Yeah.
anything else on this page? Okay, findings of the committee, page number 3. Findings of the committee. What happened there? Wait,
Oh, it's
Just gonna-
because I put a page break in.
Oh, and I added something. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then everything's moved down.
All right, so I'm off a little bit here, but we're at the lease purchase, top of the lease purchase page here.
how about does anybody have any issues with the options considered, the 2 paragraphs prior? Because you're past this, aren't you?
Oh, Did I miss something? I thought
Well,
I,
when the page break, it
Oh.
should have done, it would
I
have.
thought, I thought we went through the whole page before. Oh, I guess, yeah, I was looking at my hard copy pages.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the pay-as-you-go? Oh, under pay-as-you-go, thanks, Gary, I guess I did find one that I did see. The capital improvement plan, CIP, we're gonna put this, there'll be an addendum reference here. Just so they can find
Right.
the number there, we'll put that in.
And then, under the pay-as-you-go,
Correct?
I just want to make sure, because I know we've looked at a lot of stuff, where you make reference to attempting to fund the CIP via pay-as-you-go would likely force the mill rate up to the maximum, 3.25 for 3 to 6 years.
It's really almost in
And
infinity.
that's got a reference to something, right? Because isn't that going to reference something?
Well, that would reference Gates' new sheets.
So you want-
Addendum 10, I believe.
Okay. Right. The only reason I'm saying that is because you're making that point, where is that? I mean, how are we
Right.
supporting it?
Yeah, it'd be-
We're supporting
it'd be
it with
addendum
another
10.
document. Okay,
Would it be that same, it would be that same document we just looked at earlier?
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, that's the one.
it's addendum 10.
whatever that works out to be.
So that's those pages where it shows the mill rate being at 325 for the
Mhm.
6 years or whatever that piece is. So we'll add that in there as well. Thank you, Gary. Anything else on?
Just the next line, and cause more delays in implementing the CIP while raising the cash, maybe just while
Funding,
Yeah,
while raising funds.
funding or however.
Yeah. Like the cash.
Damn it, it's cash. It's out of my pocket, I'm telling you.
So, and cause more delays in implementing the CIP. What am I saying there? I heard kind of what you said, Pat, but I want you to help me what we're trying to say. And cause,
Oh, you erased that already, yeah. And
While
cause more
raising-
delays in implementing the CIP while raising the funding.
Necessary funds
Or
or
CIP, yeah.
necessary
the
funds.
so is
CIP
is it
What's
right here? Is
CIP
it funding? Is it
CIP
funding and
funding.
implementing the CIP? Is that,
CIP funding, delays in causing and funding.
and cause delays in funding and implementing the CIP in the future, or
No, that
Just-
works,
that works?
that works.
There you go.
All right, this is great stuff, folks.
Great.
Hope folks at home are having a fun time watching along with us.
Oh, yeah.
Our audience seems to be awake still, that's good. Anything else on that page before I go on to the next? All right, lease purchase,
Okay, before we
Oh.
move to lease purchase,
I'm sorry.
just as a reminder, it's not up there, is that we talked about the bond cost on that one little explanation, estimated annual cost, total cost, that's gonna have a paragraph underneath it kind of explaining it. It's this one,
Right.
Correct?
right? And just as a reminder, so that it just points out, makes it a little more obvious to someone who's reading it, reduces confusion.
So do you want to reference that anywhere in here? Is that what you're saying or no?
No,
do you
I'm just
wanna-
reminding
Oh.
that that's
That-
not up there and that.
That's
Okay.
part of the addendum you
Part
want
of the-
up in there.
That's part
Whatever
of the
that number is.
addendum 10.
Right, right.
That is,
Well, it's, the way it's in here, it's part of, what did I do? Oh, no, that's my mistake. I put it in the insert page. I treated it like a page and it's not. I apologize.
Okay. Lease purchase, take 3. Any questions? You see the addendums are highlighted here. That's just shows we got to make sure when we finalize this and that we got the right addendums. We move some numbers around,
Right.
things like that. So that's just why we're trying to firm that up.
Any comments on lease purchase?
That looked good.
Yep. So
I've
this now
accomplished-
is 2020 fiscal year 21.
And then I have a comment under the general obligation bonds.
Okay.
You know, I think some of my comments that I made, I kind of questioned the life of the item, you know, versus to the bond. And while I found it in here, I'm wondering if we just made another paragraph or did something to make that spell out, because we also reference in here about some of those items that we're looking at have a shorter life, just by, 7 to 10 years and so forth. And that would be nice to me, at least in looking at it, if it was somehow brought out, even if it was another paragraph, something that made it stand out. The schedule of repayment will always be shorter than.
Well, we had that very
It's
last
in there.
line.
It's
I
in there.
understand,
So you're-
but I can tell you that I went through this, and then I found it.
So you want it at the beginning?
No, I just would think if it had its own separate paragraph,
Done.
just
It'd be
just
easier
like
to-
that, okay?
Check.
Because that kinda is under general bonds, but it stands out.
Okay.
I mean, unless you guys have real heartburn with,
Nope,
it's just
no,
that
not
I
a
got
problem.
way past it, and then I started reading stuff about 7 and 10-year life, and I'm going, and then the question that came up in my mind was,
be-
are we bonding for stuff that's only good for 7 years, or
Right.
3 years, or whatever? But I didn't find
Is
it
it-
till I had to read it again.
Is that something strong enough that we wanna see in there that maybe it should be in bold?
Yeah.
Or do you wanna not?
No,
cause
I think
attention?
that, to me, that makes sense. When I looked at it,
It's
that would
under the-
make sense.
It's under the
like
bond,
that.
it's the
I like
principle,
this.
how we're looking to fund things. I think it's, I mean, but breaking out, it's great. I think it's a great recommendation. It sits on its alone, and it probably is fine that way too. It's not even,
Mhm.
any English majors?
No.
So, any, number 2, some folks, I think I got some comments or thoughts, and myself, I highlighted this, the least expensive way. You know, we wanna be very careful with what we say.
Right?
So least expensive is, it's true, if you're looking at the cost, when you're comparing the multiple years, over the first 10 years, it's less expensive. But overall, it costs more, the juice, the addendum that Gary was just talking to, it does cost more to go to a bond. So we don't wanna be contradictory to each other there.
Can it be more about an, impact, an annual impact? It would be the most,
Maybe best or least impactful.
full, something
Best.
about, let's think about that.
I mean, the bond is the best way to provide the district high priority. Maybe that just all needs to be changed to best.
Because it will be the least impact on your monthly and annual budget as a person than any other, method that we would use to fund all this.
To Mr. Waters' comment here was the bond is this is our findings, the bond is the best way to provide the district high priority capital improvements. Does the least expensive way bracket cost to taxpayers bracket need to be there?
No, that's what I'm saying. Get rid
Just,
of it.
that's
Just
what I,
Take all that out and use the word best.
just
And
best.
then at the- and then
'Cause that's what
follow
we're
up with
finding
that
out.
sentence.
Right? I mean, as a committee, that's what we're finding out, correct? That the bond is the best way to go at this time.
So, committee, I put together the general obligation bond option has the ability to smooth out the costs to the taxpayer. And is least impactful to the taxpayer by amortizing, spelled wrong. I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't have time to figure that out.
That's all right. We'll figure it out.
Too many M's? I tried that too, though.
It should be an O instead of an
It's still a motorizing.
A.
More,
Take out that
or
second
more.
O.
You gotta take out more.
And
We'll fix it later.
advising.
I got it, there you go.
Yay.
All right, is, and amortizing is the least,
No.
It's the best way.
to provide,
No, that doesn't, you still have to fix that, it's wrong.
There you go.
Maybe by amortizing period, this proves to be the best way to provide the district high priority capital improvements, something like that. Period.
We were trying to go shorter and he keeps adding
Mhm.
We can charge him for each.
Yeah.
I'm in a zone right now.
And then Tricia still has to fix it.
Dave and I's version was actually taking sentence away. You've added like 3 sentences.
What's that? I'm over here, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to spell amortize still.
Change it all to one word, and here
They
you are,
wanted to take
adding
it
2
out.
paragraphs.
All right, what do you want to do? Want to go back to something else? Tell me what you want.
You're good.
No, I'm okay.
Wanna read what
Ac-
you want?
Yeah, go
Read,
ahead.
read it so we can hear it.
The general obligation bond, me, is that what you said?
Yes, please.
The general obligation bond has the ability to smooth out the capital improvement costs with the least impact to the taxpayer. The least immediate impact?
Yes, immediate impact.
Immediate impact to the taxpayer. This allows us to amortize the costs in the best way. In the best way to provide the district the high priority capital improvement projects or something. This,
The districts instead of the, but yeah,
The district.
she's on it.
Provide high-priority capital improvements to the district.
There you go.
Or for the district.
I think this is a really key phrase that we do want to make sure we get this right because I'd hate for something to,
It's close, it's close.
I work there, I know.
Best way to provide the high priority capital improvements for the district.
And again, if it's,
I'll work on
we can sweeten that up a little bit. Is that what we're trying to say there, or do we need, okay, make it, if you got one word or one sentence, I screwed up.
Work on it. I mean, just, it's highlighted.
It's-
it. I gotta take out that one,
Trish will
Yeah,
fix it.
the first one?
and then that second.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Is that what we wanted to say,
Yeah.
basically?
Improvements,
S,
yes.
You guys are really getting picky now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted to put.
Does that sound better, Gary, from what you were concerned with when we talked? Does that
Mhm.
fix that
Mhm.
least expensive piece?
I'm trying to think when somebody else reads it.
Right.
Like I said, we've
Can't
read
agree
and
more.
seen this so many times, we know what it says, and the trouble is, we've all been there when we've sent that letter out, okay?
So remember, this is the findings of the committee, these things that you guys are saying that you've found to be true and accurate, right? So I want to make sure that this is, you guys can stand by these words, and this all makes sense. So if you guys
Chief.
are good,
Chief, I got one up,
Sure.
one up to the top of the general obligation bonds.
up here
Right,
somewhere?
right there, second line in.
Yeah,
A GOB would allow the district to implement a long overdue capital improvement plan. We've had a capital improvement plan. I don't want that to sound like that wasn't there, but I think saying the GOB would allow the district to complete long overdue capital improvements, because that's the station and some of the other stuff, but something, because we've had a capital improvement plan, I don't want it to sound like we haven't.
It just wasn't implemented.
It was to
that's a
some
good point.
extent, but not, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right there.
is it needs, is it a plan, is it, what is it, what is
I
that?
don't like the long overdue part either.
No?
How about you just the,
Yep.
Oh, this is all coming out.
District
This
to
this is
complete.
all coming out there.
For the public.
you got it said twice though. GOP would allow the district to complete,
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
the
I-
capital improvement.
But the capital improvement needs are long overdue, right? I mean, they were 10 years ago.
I was gonna say, that's why we're here, and that's why we think it's critical
Okay.
that
that's in the right-
we're
Okay, that's in the right.
going to
Alright.
the public, you
Good
know,
point.
because
Good catch, Pat.
this is, and even we spent a whole meeting talking about 2007 minutes and how we should have been doing this in 2007. We can't whitewash this
Right.
now.
You know, Dave, I kind of agree with that when you just look at facilities, but when you look at the rest of that plan, or a significant portion of that plan, that isn't long overdue. So I kind of question using those words. I'm just saying, we can go back to '07 when we talked about the stations, and that makes total sense. But when we talk about, vehicle replacement, things like that, just some of the stuff that's on the capital plan that's not going to be funded by the board, I kind of read that and kind of get that impression like, were we doing our job?
How about needed? I don't want to say much needed instead of long overdue.
I'm gonna ask a question. To be clear, I think there was a point in time where things did get put on hold and nothing was actually done. So we have recently begun to hit the play button and begin to replace fire trucks and things like that. But there was a point in time where we did not do the things that were on a capital improvement plan, and has created a backlog. So whether long overdue, we definitely don't want to be verbose in the,
Implement,
or,
maybe?
Okay, how about the word long? How about just overdue? I think is long kind of catching our attention? And just have overdue? Or for you good long overdue? Just
we
trying to
have?
get a
Lost
word in
now.
there so we can move on.
I got it right here.
Would allow the district to
You're saying we just took out the long to complete overdue capital improvement needs. I don't take it as we haven't been doing our job, Gary. I appreciate the sensitivity to it, but I think there are things that should have been getting done that weren't.
I agree, and I think that it's important to, again, I'm not trying to bag on anybody, but and nor do I think it is deserved, but if we've been doing this all along and everybody's been quote unquote, following the schedule that's been in place for years, then why are we all of a sudden $18 million in the hole here and needing to bond something? So, like it or not, we've got to lift our skirt up here a little bit and say, we've got some issues here and we got to get caught up.
I will accept whatever you guys want to put.
I've only wore a skirt once, for the record.
I think we need to go to some of that classes. What are those classes called?
Two different ones, you're correct. It's on the same day, though. It's for charity. Are you guys, it's important that you guys are okay with the wording. As much as I don't want to get hung up on the issues, I want to make sure everyone's comfortable.
I'm okay with long overdue or overdue.
Yeah,
You
I'm
guys
okay
make
with the
choice.
way it is, and
Overdue or long overdue? You guys just tell me. I took out the long.
I'm okay with long overdue because many of the projects that we're talking about are long overdue. It's not all of them, but
I'm good.
How about some of the? No. No. All right. I don't care.
I think we can live with it.
understand your
I think we live with it.
sensibilities to that, but I think you're exactly right.
I think
Why
we
are
need to
we
have
here?
another meeting just to discuss this sentence.
All right. I guess I heard the chairman say, the chairman say, move on. All right, I'm on to the next. Is there anything else on these pages here? Up to number 3 on this findings. We're going on to number 4 unless you guys tell me to
Wait,
back.
on number 3, there was handwritten on my sheet, a copy of it.
At the bottom.
Oh, it just
On the
needs to
bottom
be
right?
Yeah, the
the
year.
year 2020, 2021
right.
instead of a blank.
All right, number 4. Number 4. Gary, you got something on this one you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's, I'm reading it again. Oh, I didn't know we had some, when I read this, the reason that I brought up the issue when we said, are you comfortable with a 15 or a $18 million bond? I'm going, so we're asking for $3 million for the public to manage unforeseen capital and operating needs. And I would think that if they were unforeseen, what are we asking for? So I think the word, that's how I read that sentence.
And that's a legitimate way, but the answer to that question when Joe Public comes to you and says, what do you mean? These is just as the chairman, and I don't know if you were at the meeting, but just as the chairman and as Chris has explained to us on numerous occasions in the last 2-3 months, that what if PRSS, whatever, the pension folks come to the district and say, we need another $3 million. It's not going to be foreseen. It's all of a sudden they're going to come. Or you're going to have another, what is the Allen decision, or
Hall.
there's going to be Hall decision. There's things like that that pop up, and the chairman of the committee here has said that he's been on the board a couple of years now, and that's all that ever happens, quote unquote, is that all of a sudden things pop up that cost money. They never pop up and say, here's an extra $1 million for you. They pop up and say, so that's what I meant by that terminology. If it's too uncomfortable, I don't have a problem taking it out, but.
Can you put in for example, e.g., could you put in,
The PSPRS.
yes, just give an example.
It talks about that somewhere else in the document about that. And to be clear, that this bond would not be able to be used for PSPRS and costs and things like that. But if we had to shift or reallocate the money we would have been paying in capital that year or whatever, and to offset, it's really like the offset if something catastrophic occurs. But at this point, I also feel like we've fairly well earmarked the projects, not the exact projects, but kind of the buckets that the money's coming from and the needs. So I definitely don't want to create any ambiguity in the language, but
To Gary's point, if we take out just the word unforeseen, provides the district flexibility in managing capital and operating needs and spreads those costs out through, that's what it is. It's for, is to manage whatever needs there are at that time.
And I'd be okay.
And I see Gary's point of this unforeseen, oh, here's $3 million to do whatever. But it's,
We've attached projects to the $18 million.
Again, yeah, they're earmarked in concept, not in exact half the days.
Everybody okay with just taking the word unforeseen out?
I am, because I think if you leave it in, it would make people maybe think that,
Gary, you
well,
okay with that?
So let me ask a question. We're on page 4. We are on findings of the committee. Where is the recommendation written in here that says we are proposing a X million dollar bond? Page, where did I?
Number 1.
first sentence.
First
Missed it. Okay. All right. Then,
And do
then
we-
why do we even have this in there then?
Because the committee wanted it in there.
Because I read that sentence, and to be honest with you, I read that sentence that what we're proposing is we're gonna raise it $3 million just in case.
That's how it reads.
That's how it reads to me. So I'm going, and to me, from a public standpoint, to read that would be a red flag.
But if you take out unforeseen, I think it,
Committee felt bonding the additional $3 million provides the district flexibility in managing capital and/or operating needs associated with the bond.
And spreads those.
So I think taking unforeseen out is a very, very great way to easily clarify what that is. And really, I think when someone says, hey, you have $15 million in station projects, and the $3 million is to give the flexibility in managing that capital needs. And we talked about, well, what if one of our fire trucks breaks? Then Telecom may not get, we may fund fleet. We earmarked 1.9 million. But if a fire truck breaks or whatever happens, then we may go, hey, listen, we need the fire truck more than we need this telecom thing.
Unforeseen.
And that's taking unforeseens out, but that gives us the flexibility. The word flexibility is the number that, or the word that becomes operative there that says, hey, we can,
That's really where you want to
yeah.
focus on.
and it also helps the mill rate and all the things we just showed you in the last. If we bond 15 million, here's what the rates do, because we have to fund that other 3 million through the mill rate, and it pushes you up towards a 325 cap, much closer than bonding and the decision to make the $3 million capital non-station funding is, I think that's what that 3 million says. I think it just breaks out that $18 million very well. And the question is, I guess, then do you want to say at the beginning, this, about 18 million, where the $18 million come from, or is it just being added with the 15 million and the 3, and that's where you get 18? That's where it says, right? The additional cost over $18 million bond is $184.
Yep.
I think-
just
You
the,
could say in addition.
Oh, therefore, in addition?
We felt bonding well, I have to think of a different word, so that we don't say addition twice.
right,
but-
right.
And
Yeah, I mean, I would think if
operating
the word
needs.
unforeseen
Yeah.
went away,
Yeah.
then no one would imply that it's, they don't even know what they want to spend the money
It's
on,
gone.
but they want to
Right.
have some money to spend it on.
Right.
Where we've already defined those in the sense that we've gone over, because we talk about, in the beginning of the paragraphs,
maybe-
talks about just the 15
Maybe
million
those are
just
the
for the
words we should
station.
use as defined or as described or as discussed. The committee felt bonding the additional 3 million provides the district flexibility in managing those capital and operating needs.
But
Just like that.
Just highlight it
more-
yellow.
Highlight
gotta
yellow,
throw one
and I
more
think
wrench
if
in there,
we
'cause
make
I-
sure the word,
It can't be
Un-
used for operational needs, can it? I mean, it's for capital funding, so even operational doesn't need to be in there. It's for managing capital needs. Now, though it may offset the cost in the operational arena some way, that's not truly a piece of that. It's managing capital
Yep.
needs.
and the term operating needs bothers me a little bit too, because I think the people out there might assume that we're gonna be using capital money to fund the operating
Or
budget.
a bond money to pay for salaries or something like that.
Right,
That's not what we're doing.
Right, okay.
I think taking out both
Unforeseen.
the first word, unforeseen, and we take out operating needs and operating needs, and, or, yeah. So now it's the
Done.
committee felt bonding the additional, is it felt requesting bonding for, or is it just felt bonding?
The committee discussed,
Requesting.
requested the additional $3 million. The committee's
Recommends
recommendation.
the bonding
Of
of the additional $3 million to provide
Provides the district flexibility in managing
capital needs.
capital needs projects, just capital needs.
capital needs.
So should
Capital,
it be in
capital
managing
improvement needs,
the
capital,
No.
It's to manage
Just
the CIP.
Just capital needs.
Just
capital
capital
needs.
needs.
And spreading those costs
And
and believes, so this is the committee believes spreading those costs out over 25 years to current and future property owners is the prudent,
Best practice, best
pro-
way, proper.
prudent, proper, best practice. I don't know what best practice is what, is the,
less
Fiscally
Impacting.
responsible.
is the fiscally responsible
There you go.
method
Very good.
for
Method, period.
procurement or
How about
meth-
just period?
In
Method,
business
period.
now, but I guess for,
Is the most,
they like to be
is the,
verbose.
No, you put an and in there. You can put an and in any sentence and then keep going. There's no run-ons.
the committee recommends the bonding of the additional
Your
3 million
owner would be gone.
to provide the district in managing critical, in managing capital needs.
Or just is fiscally responsible, period.
I believe spreading those costs out over 25 years is current and future property is the
Is
most fiscally fiscally responsible. What, is that what you're saying?
That's-
Is fiscally responsible, that sounds good. Future property owners is fiscally responsible.
Because you're saying the
Method is
you're saying the
not-
15 million above, right?
Nah.
And then you're saying additionally the 3 million, that's where you get the $18 million from.
Right?
You know, after 15 million bond, you could put a semicolon instead of a period, right before the highlight begins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then kind of make that
It attaches
all
to it,
one
right.
Yeah,
thought.
sentence on each
All
side,
one
right.
thought, there you go. The committee's recommendations of bonding the additional 3 million to provide the district.
Like that, Tricia?
Earners is the most fiscally responsible.
And just so I'm clear,
I don't,
this here is addendum 10. page-
No, the whole thing is addendum 10.
The
Okay,
whole thing
cool.
is,
The
Just-
whole, all 8 pages are addendum 10.
and that number, page 6 should be page 7,
I don't like the, how it's ending.
or at least how
Current
Gabe has
future
got it
property
currently
owners.
formatted.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
You'll have
why
to fix the end of
we
that
need to make
sentence.
sure that all the
Which,
references.
which sentence, Karen?
The, where it ends in fiscally responsible, right before that, leading up to those 2 words, there needs to be something more.
We can let
Let you guys-
Tricia
Yeah,
work on that and come up with some,
Just beating this to death.
yeah.
Make
Is,
that prettier.
is being fiscally responsible? Being?
I don't know, but something.
Chief, I think we
Or
should
just-
you have the
Okay.
idea, Tricia has the idea,
Okay,
and we trust you to take care of
Okay.
this.
Perfect.
perfect.
Thank you.
Anything else on that page?
Ruining
All right, we're moving on to station number 4. Hand down. All right, station number 4 is issues. Is there anything in station number 4 issues there that you would like to talk about or add or change? Station number 5?
Number 5, the only thing, the soft cost footnote there needs to be changed to 2 instead of footnote 3.
Yes. Wait, no, I changed.
It's already two.
You changed the order of the footnotes.
Yes, I did, because it was referenced earlier in the document, and 2 and 3 were out of order. But I'll make sure all of those.
I'll highlight it for now so you'll see it. So you think that should be a 2? Is that what you're saying, Dave?
I believe that's correct based on the
Okay.
current order of Tricia's footnotes.
It's now a 2 in my book, and we'll just confirm that's accurate.
Do we somewhere in this document, I don't even know if it's appropriate, I'm just speaking. You know how we had in our minutes, we were talking about how we're having so many visitors and their impact is they're renting and they're spending and that's how they're kind of paying towards part of this bonding because of the income, the influx that we're getting, which is allowing, the commercial vendors, so to speak, be able to make a little more money so they can contribute more. Hopefully, it's gonna balance off some of that. We're not gonna take everything they're making and put it towards taxes, but as it kind of rises to the, somehow, because that question came up again and again about, nobody else is paying for this but us. And feeling a little, not used, but the residents are feeling the burden of it all and wanting to know how are we,
So
addressing it.
where do we put that?
But, well, and while it's really not a way to say that it's, for us, it's just a service that our community is providing to the visitors. It's required. They're not really coming here paying us for this plan or this capital improvement plan.
But should we address something in there? I don't know if we should or not, I'm just, we talked about it at length, ad nauseum, about,
Karen,
I don't know.
are you talking about trying to maybe show a little clarification? Because so far what we've really talked about is the impact on our homes,
Correct.
okay?
Not the
Where we also know there's gonna be an impact on, Lonnie's gonna get a tax bill that's gonna be bigger.
And the empty lots.
And, but the point is are you trying to kind of maybe express that this is gonna be spread over not only with just the impact to residential, but also to,
Well,
commercial
that's-
properties?
That's true, I brought that up in the last meeting, and maybe that would suffice, bring up the point that,
So we could take the
Commercial.
addendum from Gabe, and we could add the commercial, average commercial in there as well, and the average empty lot,
So
vacant lot,
someone's-
if you'd like.
someone's not just looking at it and going, well, where's everybody else paying their fair share? Cause it's really is, we're talking about the taxpayers, but you are exactly right. And that may help
Yeah.
quantify some of that.
If we have that in the addendum, I think we can do that. We'll just have the commercial, but I think in Stifel's report, it talks about the average commercial price and the average empty lot. So we'll just take those and plug them into that same, comparison model.
At least it'll
15,
be
18.
there if somebody questions to it, have reason to address instead of it not being listed at all. I think that would help me.
I think that's a real good point. There's how many people actually live here versus how many visitors and the dollar amount that's generated. I mean, there's ambulance billing that we get as well that comes in, but the commercial, the tourists and where they're staying and all the money that's generated from that needs to be expressed somewhere. And if you're going to do it there, I think that's important too. And maybe there's a place for this somewhere in the annual report,
The economic-
ultimately in time.
What is
but-
our economy? Our economy is our tourism. So, it can't be just, not talked about.
Well, I think that
Do we talk about that somewhere?
I don't know if it was the chief that mentioned this, or it was Gabe or somebody else, but somebody had mentioned that as we get more visitors, as the local economy flourishes, new businesses open up, and they start paying property taxes that maybe weren't being paid prior to that, or they're paying more than just the vacant land or the vacant buildings. So someone was making that argument the
Yeah.
other day.
I don't remember the specific, but, also when they make improvements, if it's, with the Prop 117, if they come in and redo a building, that will change its value in the Prop 117 era, post-Prop 117.
But Gary's
I-
exactly right by pointing out that it really just, we're favoring just the residential. We're really talking more to them instead of a little bit.
So
of everybody.
the interesting thing is that the people that will vote on this bond are registered voters of the Sedona Fire District. Commercial property owners do not get a vote unless they are registered to vote here.
Well, then maybe that needs to be explained. There's a little.
They have their
asterisk.
share, but I'm trying to know where it goes. So I'm thinking, if anything, I'm not sure where that's going and where you're trying to take it, Karen. But maybe in item number, like we're doing this 1 through 10, this is the findings of the committee. Is that what this is called?
Right.
And something, if you want to make some additional finding there about the
Like a note.
cost
note,
share
you know.
of how this is going to be funded, and commercial vacant lands and land and residential properties will all be taxed at their appropriate tax rates.
Something about, as we understand, only the voting residents, registered residents have the vote to impact this. You need to still understand that the commercial part of our community, our economy, will be paying its share as well. Something, I'm
Yeah.
not sure exactly how. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm trying to find where it goes, and if someone else, wherever you want it to go, I'll have it put
Or
whatever
do
you
we
guys
want
like.
it to go in there at all? Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's important because you hear that question a lot. People ask that, the burden is on us, but really, if you could equate the dollar amount that's coming in from commercial occupancies towards the district versus residential in some way, or at least look at it and be able to express that not only here but later. That's part of educating the public of who's funding, You know, because there's a lot of stuff we do with people. Obviously, the rescues are a lot of people from out of town. There are a lot of people from in town as well, but the burden is shared. So it's important to be able to express that.
And maybe the answer is just a simple sentence statement someplace in this document that does say that commercial,
Like a note, you know.
just that
commercial.
everybody pays their fair share, not just the property owners, but it's the commercial part of it also pays its fair share to fund these improvements. Something simple without getting into too much detail
Simple's
that,
good, but just plugging it in somewhere, I think.
And if we're gonna do that, I would recommend it become a new number 2 under findings of the committee, so that we address it first and easy before we get into specifics about specific
Noting
things.
that the commercial part of our portion of our district pays their, taxes, is used towards, I don't know, I don't know.
yeah, I think Chief,
it's a great
you get the
concept.
idea of what we're
Uh,
looking for, and Tricia,
Fairly. So,
maybe you can,
funding of any bond obligation will be cost shared by the tax-paying entities, residential
To include residential?
at ten percent. We'll need to fix that, what, 10% of what, the
You can fix that.
something, 10% of
Yeah.
something.
Commercial 18%.
Commercial,
18, right?
properties,
How much is that? What percentage?
18.
18,
Okay, it is, I thought it was 18.
at 18%.
And vacant is.
And vacant lands will pay I think it's 15%, but I'm not,
Yeah, I think it's 15%.
I think that's excellent, because it doesn't need to expand, it just needs to be there. So if someone's going, yeah, we're just not paying the whole bill.
You got percent happy there. Pay the
Percent
percent,
happy.
15%.
And he'll highlight that in the,
yeah, so, is it, do we wanna say any more than that, or is that
No, that's
short and
fine. I think
sweet?
keep it
Yeah,
simple.
that'll do. And, cause then if an explanation needs, then I can speak on what I'm talking, what my questions were. Well, as we raise the economy, everybody's getting raised, everyone's making more money, and we're paying their share, and it's just a win-win. It's not all on us residential owners only. It's right in there. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And having that in there, because I'm, sorry. Having the percentages in there actually is a good idea, because I'm sure majority of the homeowners don't realize how much more commercial does pay.
I would agree with that.
On number 2, funding of any, should it be funding of
He'll
a,
fix it. It's highlighted yellow. He'll fix it.
yeah.
Well,
so-
that's fine, fund of a bond
of a
obligation.
bond obligation?
Same language.
They'll fix it.
Yeah,
Same language, all right. Keep it all the same.
Moving
Tricia's
along,
on it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, let's
Thank
move
you.
on
Sorry,
here,
we
and
got
You got
I
that,
think if
Tricia?
we
So
can
you got this where we're
provide
at?
the chief and Tricia,
And I'll make sure that the first reference has the.
if we could just provide them the general concept and
Yeah.
not get too involved in the wordsmithing, I think it would be beneficial. So what page are we on, Chief?
We're on page 5, I think, is what we're looking at right now,
Station,
Which may be
station,
year 6.
which might be year 6,
okay.
or 7, or I don't know, or 4, or something like that, maybe, I'm not
Are we on
sure.
station
is
4 or
5.
station
All
5?
the pages have shifted.
I'm on station number, I'm on item number 10 right now, I think is
Which
where
is
we're at.
5.
Station 5.
So station 5, is there anything else on station number 5? Was there a postscript there? Is that-
There is a postscript there that needs to be tweaked.
Which one is that? At the bottom?
Down low. Mhm.
Down
There
low.
you go.
Down low and go.
I think there's,
Yeah, because up here, 3 is the Rand McNally one up here, so you see that's 3, but it's 2 is the soft cost one.
Just based on what you have here.
yeah, what I want to do is they're sequential. The reference, the first time is 1,
Yes.
the second one is 2, so I'll make sure it's sequential.
Should we put in there, the committee believes something like this, that relocating Station 5 to the Slide Rock area while the state and federal, departments, district, I don't know, agencies, are favorable to this, are favorable, because we don't always get that, are favorable to this, time, to this, I don't know, opportunity is a top priority and needs to be, you know, looked at. Why, some may say, well, why do we need to move Station 5? Well, you don't understand. The climate isn't always right, and we had to wait 10 years for it to come back to that again.
I don't feel that strongly that it needs to go in there, but however, I don't think it hurts to put it in, and I think probably the chief and Tricia can
Yeah.
figure out a way to fit that in there.
Okay.
So I got right now, just kind of putting here, given the fact that currently there's a strong interest by the Arizona State Parks to co-locate. Co-locate,
It'll be, yeah,
Sure.
a hyphen here.
Oh,
Yeah.
what it is?
No, yeah, after code.
Co-locate on the property at Slide Rock may make the timing of this project,
Opportune.
Opportunistic.
a prime opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on here. Anything more on item number 10 before we move on to page 6? Okay, page 6. Item number 11, Fire Station 3. Any comments?
Again, just that footnote, but Tricia's got that already.
Okay, item number 12.
It's really, all the items have also added one because you put number 2 in.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm like, I'm totally screwing this.
So that is fine.
Yes.
We're really not on
Yeah.
12.
Right.
Okay.
Your paper says 11, mine says
Yeah.
12, because we added a new number 2 about the commercial
Okay.
properties. Thank you, Tricia, I was starting to panic wide.
So I think we finished with
Station 3.
Station 3. We're talking about Station 1, which starts at the bottom of page 6. Any comments? Not hearing any. Moving on to page 7. We're still talking about station number 1, and we're also talking about apparatus and telecommunications. Any concerns, suggestions?
I think the only thing that I would change or add under apparatus is we already have addendum 6, which is Chief Pachura's PowerPoint song and dance that he gave to us a few weeks ago. I would like either to add to that or add another addendum that includes Chief Pachura's capital improvement plan that has all the list of the fire engines and telecom equipment, et cetera, because we reference that a lot in this document. And frankly, that's where we're getting a lot of these dollars
Yeah,
from.
that's where it goes, right there. It would fit.
So I've got, and the proposed, 'cause I think the board will probably should have the board actually take action on that at some point.
So would it be under 13 and 14? It would be noted for both the addendums,
Correct.
right? Okay.
For so you're really 12?
Yeah, under apparatus
Under
and
apparatus
Oh.
and telecommunications.
Do we wish,
telecommunications.
do we wish to add the fact that he's making the statement that it's 7.7 mil is what we need? However, 1.92 is what's being proposed as bond funded? Because he did provide that as a document when he gave us that modified list?
And we have that, Gary. If you read apparatus, it says 7.7.
Oh,
And then
yes,
it
is
said-
that in addendum 6?
Correct. You have that in your book right now. You can look at that
Okay.
if you like.
Yeah, I don't know what his.
You do not-
I don't have his PowerPoint, so I don't know
You
what
will
his
not
PowerPoint.
see, oh, no, it's in your book.
And I think the PowerPoint did reflect the 1.92, if I remember correctly.
One of them may have changed.
Yeah, I thought he came back with a modification to the, remember when we, not the meeting I missed, but the meeting prior, that he gave us that little form to fill out? I thought that was a modification to what he was originally proposing.
priority, and that, you're talking about this thing.
Yes. So he ended up taking those numbers and modified it. I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I'll leave it at that. I'm
Yeah,
only
the
asking
replacement
question.
plan for the next 10 years, I got 3.5 million here in the book that we just were provided.
Okay, there's nothing in my addendum 6. 5, 6, 7. I'm missing my addendum 6.
That's a shame.
Okay. But now you won't have it.
I know people.
Replacement plan for the next 10 years doesn't even come close to 7 million.
All right, so
But it also included other equipment. And that's how we got, the 7.7 came specifically
Oh, wait a
from
minute.
Chief Ventura.
Wait a minute.
But it also includes some,
Or-
rescue tools, Hirsch tools,
My
RMS
apologies, yes.
generators, SCBA's,
Right.
that kind of a thing.
But my
So-
question is you want to bond 1.92. He gave us a list of how he proposed that's what he felt should be bonded.
That is correct.
So but that's not in addendum 6.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about that.
Well, I'm just saying to verify that it is in there or not.
So we can add that in there. We came up to 1.92 with 2 engine and 3 water tenders as an estimated cost. So we can add that, just at the end of the day, it may not be that, that's what we end up funding, it's not an earmarked piece.
Well, and I think we talked about even last meeting when we were going through our voting process and picking what we wanted to bond and what we wanted to pay go. Ultimately, we voted to bond 1.9. Personally, and I think the committee all agreed, I don't care if it's a 1.9, if that, in that 1.9, it's all engines or all ambulances or a water tender and 2 engines. We're just saying out of the apparatus category, we want to bond 1.9 and the balance will be pay go.
Okay.
So I don't think our recommendation needs to be that specific.
So,
okay, so are we finished with apparatus and telecommunications?
so the same concept goes in for the telecom as far as what we're budgeting for.
Right.
Is those stuff, we had the debate about whether or not we're gonna budget a $50,000 warning siren or a whatever, we have $3 million some dollars worth of needs. You figure. We're gonna budget 1.945 or whatever that was. So-
Okay, then moving on to page 8 of 8, the addendums. I assume that there will be some changes on this page based on some of the discussion we've already had, and there might be some tweaking to this necessary, Chief, Tricia?
If there's needed any, we'll make those. I mean,
Right. Right. So there's really not much. Does anyone have any documents or information they would like to include that's not here already on the addendum page?
Tricia, the only thing I was going to ask you is, did you need footnote? I think the last footnote. Were you able to find that, or do you need a copy of it? I can't. Let me see which one it is here now.
The soft cost?
No, the Arizona Leisure Travel Vacation Guide. Were you able to find that?
I did not go to that website,
Okay,
but I will.
I have a copy of it. I printed it. I don't.
Tricia?
I believe that we need to add a signature page on this and get each committee member's signature on the report. I believe that would be
Is
beneficial.
everyone agreeable to that?
Yes.
How about also an addition of who the members are by name?
Well, that's what
So name, I mean, it'll be members on the committee, their name and then a signature line, well, yeah, so, okay.
Can we sign it anonymous? I like some of these letters we're getting them.
Well, they're technically not signed, and they're also even taped shut, so we have no DNA tracing abilities. So if you'd like to do that with, you know,
Yep. My last one came from Station 3.
Same here.
I saw that.
Mine was too.
we're doing a full-scale investigation, who held that from Station 3.
Whose DNA? Oh, that's right.
Alrighty,
So
so
this will be a committee,
Station 4.
committee page with names and signature.
What's a pooge?
I'm sure this is my computer's not working properly. That's not me at all.
Exactly right.
I'm laughing because that's exactly how I type. I love those right squiggly lines.
Yep.
Help me help you.
Okay, so thanks, Tricia, for adding that. I think that's really important on that. So, committee, at this point, I think we've been through the lion's share of the work. I would think that short of, tweaking the little pieces that Tricia spoke, or you asked Tricia to do, we'll firm up all of the addendums. We'll try to get you copies. We just want to get you so you have this in your books. If you guys feel like you want to, you're good and you don't need them right now and you want to get them back next week, and if we do any more tweaking, we're happy to take the books back. If it's, something you don't need right now, you probably got all this information anyways, it's all been emailed to you, but we want to get it printed so you had it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think we should leave them here until we're finished and then get
You'll
them
have 'em.
complete.
And our next meeting will be on Monday again?
No?
Well, what I'm hoping is that the committee would be prepared to make a motion today that would be approving the report as amended, and that then we would get it back, and as far as the signature sheet, we would probably have to come in and sign it.
Well, you could sign it at the board meeting if you're able to make it to the board meeting. If you're next Wednesday, if you're going to speak at the board meeting, if you're not able to make there, then yeah, we'd have to get you to come in and sign it at whatever point, post the board. But it'd
That's
be
right,
nice
if
to
you're
have
gonna be at the board meeting,
Yeah.
because you're gonna be making at the workshop next week, you're referring to the 3:30 workshop.
Alright.
He looks healthy.
Can we get that signature page done pretty rapidly? Because I'm not sure I'll be here either. Like, I can come in before. Then I
Yeah.
get signed.
When
I
you're going to
think
be
so.
gone?
I might be, I'm thinking the 17th and 18th.
Okay. No, let's make sure we don't need it by today at 3 o'clock or something.
No.
Okay. So Monday.
I have to go work on my boat.
Oh, of course.
Very important.
So go ahead, Tricia.
I did work on a motion, a suggested motion, if you would like that, or, because we talked about it last time.
So if Tricia's got a motion, she'll pass to somebody to do, or,
You can read it, or I could just read it
okay.
when you're ready.
If you can read it, then one of us will move.
Yeah.
to copy that.
If you like it.
So
That'd be great.
this is about accepting the report, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you want to hear from Tricia then, or any more?
Yeah, we're ready to hear from
discussion?
Tricia.
Much prettier voice.
Move to approve the Sedona Fire District Citizens Advisory Committee report as amended today, with recommendations to the governing board, including calling for a bond election in November 2017 in an amount not to exceed $18 million.
I'd like to make that motion as read. I would like to make that motion as read by Tricia.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
So committee, we will work on this report, finalizing it. We will get it to you. If there are any commas missing, something you get back to Tricia, and we'll finalize that. But we're trying to get this to the board in their packet, so they have time to absorb this as well, in lieu of your presentation or in preparation of your presentation. They've been anxiously awaiting.
I have no idea what kind of presentation.
Well, I told them it'd be 2.5 hours.
What's that?
I told them it'd be 2.5 hours.
Uh-huh.
So, no, we have a 3:30 to 4:30. We have a 1-hour presentation slotted. So we do have that plan for it. If we don't need the whole time, we don't need the whole time, but I imagine there'll be some questions from the board. A few have been at many of the meetings, so.
Well, and I'll do whatever you want me to do, but I guess my feeling is just a very quick, here's our recommendation, and hopefully you've had time to read it, and can I answer any questions for you? I mean, unless you want to start, have Tricia or somebody start pulling together PowerPoints and clickers and
No, I
the
don't know
whole
that we need to do
gig.
that. I think it'd be wise to provide some summarization of, you know, kind of what we did, you know, so we, you know, had 10 meetings or whatever it's been. We've spent, you know, lots of time working on this. We've understand the complexities, whatever you're saying, something like that, to kind of set the table that we've done the research, we've done the work, we've done the thinking part of it. How we got to 18 million, I think is an important piece, and then open up for questions.
Maybe just reiterate the 7 committee recommendations or 8, whatever, and then.
Yep, you're just highlighting those. And if you want those in a PowerPoint, and you want us to do it, we can do it, or you want to just read them, that's, you know, that's fine.
Keep it simple.
So, and then certainly answer any questions there may be on that type of stuff, and if there's any public that has any questions that'll be there, then, you know, the committee will be here and have the ability to maybe, you know, chime in if there's a question that's pertinent to them, or you.
And are we able, or should we address the public how is
If
that?
it's an agendized item and they speak to that item, then we can address that if it's. an
We
unagenda-
meaning you and the board, or
Wherever it's
the
appropriate.
committee? Okay.
Wherever it's appropriate. I mean, it's, you know, we won't put you on the spot, but if it makes sense, the question comes to the committee, it'll probably go to Tim as the chair. He would probably defer to you because he did that really well last time. And that's kind of, well, how it goes. And we'll just play it by ear. I mean, there may not be any questions from the public, but I mean, hoping that people will, you know, if there's an interest. And the whole thought is that to get it to the board to just think, you know, about at Wednesday's meeting, and then they'll be back at the June meeting with the potential call call for the election. You know, they've had a month, the public's had a month to process it. We can get
When is the
questions
June
vetted. We can get
meeting?
lots of letters in the mail.
When is the
Third
June?
Wednesday.
So it'd be the 21st?
Yes, of June.
All right. Try and be there.
So that's the plan, as I know it. And that meeting, I don't know the committee would need to be there at that meeting. That's the board at that point, you know, I mean, it's great if you're
Nice
there,
to
but I
hear.
wouldn't think that's a mandatory opportunity for you guys to be there. This meeting next Wednesday, it'd be nice to have you there. And you're certainly more than welcome to be at the June 21st meeting, but as far as putting our calendar as a have to, I don't, unless something changes in the month leading up to it, that really feels like there's some people with lots of questions that would be better asked by the committee than the board, then we may try to say who can be there, and let's,
If you start getting that feel, maybe do an email.
we absolutely will,
Let us know, hey, there
absolutely,
might be some questions. Who can attend? Will attend.
absolutely. Yes.
Do you think it would be important to have that, at least that one slide that shows the impact to the taxpayers about both residential and commercial, if you're going to add it?
Well, yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're not gonna make a 90-page, you know, PowerPoint slide, though we end up with a 5 or 8 page PowerPoint for you to work with, Dave. You know, we're happy to do that, or maybe that just makes, it clarifies it for, again, the viewing public that may have a question, like, you just said 18 million, the board said that's great. We didn't even do a song and dance, you know, so we'll put something together if that makes sense. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, is there any other business? Oh,
There is.
The committee, the future of the committee.
Move to abolish?
So board, committee, I think this is, you know, your opportunity to make sure the work is done. We want to give you the opportunity to, you know, if you don't think your work is done, you know, then remain as a committee and go forth. But if you are like to make a recommendation to dissolve the committee, then at the board meeting, we'll get that on the agenda, and the board can formally dissolve this committee. If for some reason something happens between now and then and we're not done, or then we can still do it. But after the board takes that action, then you'll be done, and all the open meeting laws and all the things that would restrict any of our operations would no longer be in existence for, you know, whatever. And you don't have to have this wonderful accolade hanging over you any longer.
Would anyone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved, as the chief stated.
Second.
So there's been a motion and a second to recommend to the board that this committee be dissolved.
All right. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
So I guess that takes care of it not having our meeting on Monday.
Okay, unless anyone's interested in a permanent fire chief oversight committee, that this be transitioned into.
We'd love
Okay,
that.
this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, folks, for doing a great job. We really appreciate all the hard work, guys.
We're no longer a
I know.
committee, so.
Thank you.
That's right.
We can do whatever now.
So we'll leave our books right here for you.